John was beaten up and attacked in that house. Who did it?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. And it's not for us to know. Somebody other than Karen is responsible for that, for the killing of John.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay. How is everybody? Hello, Goldie, Tammie, Maestro, my trusted and very dedicated moderator, Trixie, Tricks for Kids, how are you? Freak Aaron Reed, Lisa, Kimmy K, Naven, Angela, so nice to see everyone. I wanted to talk today with you guys about Karen Reed and her own statements and how they're so telling. And Innocence Fraud Watch did an excellent blog asking the question, is Judge Cannoni's gag order worth the paper it's written on if this ID discovery is allowed to go forward? And of course it is, because we have such a strong First Amendment in our country, but my understanding is that they embedded in the defense the ID discovery mockumentarians. I don't know. I'm not convinced it's not a innocence fraud campaign. You notice that they didn't embed themselves with the O'Keefe family or even O'Keefe's friends or even really tried to stay neutral, but they're, right on top of Karen Reed as she's at the Omni Hotel picking out her court outfits. I mean, come on. We're going to take a look at the trailer, the Inside Edition. They're reporting on this new documentary that's coming out coincidentally right before trial. We're now less than a month away from trial. And I understand that we have a very strong First Amendment in this country. However, there's been no countermeasures, like, say, having a decent distance beyond 200 meters. Is it 200 yards or 200 meters from the courthouse, keeping protesters away? The jury could hear the protesters in the courtroom. I mean, their presence was felt. It did absolutely nothing. It seems like these measures are measures that are wins for the Commonwealth, but when you actually see them go down in real time, they're not wins at all. And this has been the closest I think I've ever seen to a kangaroo court in America in real time. Just allowing Aidan Carney, who has all these witness harassment charges for witnesses in this case, allowed to sit in the journalist's box in this tiny courtroom. The fact that Judge Cannoni approved this request by the defense to move the trial to a tiny courtroom, that in the middle of the, when it, I wouldn't call it the middle of the summer, but the summer when it's hot. So everyone's punished. It really didn't seem to have the audio worked out, the video worked out. Everything felt cramped. And Lally, who was the only one speaking for the Commonwealth, of course, he had his Laura McLaughlin on his supporting him, who seems to be an ace lawyer. Boy, if you ever ask her for a motion page number, she seems to have it. Everything on the ready. She seems to know this case inside and out. However, she wasn't cross-examining the witnesses. She wasn't doing the direct examinations. And here we have Lally being admonished, not screamed at, that's an exaggeration, admonished frequently by Judge Cannoni to speak up, to speak up, to speak up. But he's one guy. And this was all the defense, this is what the defense asked for. They said they couldn't get a fair trial in a big courtroom, so they moved them to this tiny courtroom because there was bad sight lines of the witnesses on for 2 jurors. I mean, why don't you just put the alternates in those seats? Call it a day. I don't know. It just seemed to be that Karen Read wanted a big mob in court at these hearings for her until she didn't. That was my view. And if you've been following my Adelson coverage, Donna Adelson tried to repeat it. And Judge Everett in that case, who's overseen the cases for the murder of Dan Markel, he's like, no thanks, of Charlie and Donna. He's like, no thanks. We can't do it. It's just not practical with the amount of exhibits, etc. Same here. So I want to get into first, let's look at some of Karen Read's very telling statements. We always talk about how psychopaths like to lie and get over, but they do stick as much to the truth as they can. They do tell a lot of the truth too. And here's a good example. So let's take a listen. First, let's watch how Inside Edition is presenting this to the public. This totally unbiased documentary that certainly wouldn't ever take sides. Now, I have a bet with my girlfriend who thinks that this may not be a innocence fraud documentary, a pro Karen Read documentary. I'm not convinced. The woman behind it comes from the show. I want to call it. Hold on, let me get back to you. I have it on it's Robert Stack's show, Unsolved Mysteries. So she has a long history with unsolved mysteries. So if anything, if she's not pro Karen Read, she's certainly pro increase the doubt. So get people intrigued by making them think that there's really good points on both sides and we just don't know. This is something that Sarah Koenig did with her podcast, her Innocence Frauds podcast about Heyman Lee's killer, Adnan Syed, that it really eventually got him out, as I predicted. I think almost 7 or 8 years ago, one of my first podcasts was called How Serial Will Release a Murderer. And boy, did I prove to be right about that. So I'm not convinced. I think she's going to make it look like, there's a lot of doubt, and you could go either way. A smart person could side either with the defense or with the Commonwealth. It's an iffy case, and that seems to be how she's made a living, in increasing the mystery and the doubt in these stories. Okay, so let's get into it. Here's Inside Edition reporting on Karen Reid on the teaser or the trailer that was released. You can call it a teaser, you can call it a trailer that was released about Karen Reid's investigation discovery. I'm going to call it a mockumentary, little like Spinal Tap, but with Karen Reid in the lead role. And here's their reporting on it. She hates it. She rather explain herself, but she hates explaining herself because people are looking for her tells. So I'm not a big fan of behavioral analysis. I find, first you have to find someone's baseline. Find it very subjective, and I haven't found it particularly accurate. That's my opinion. I know other people swear by it. I haven't found it very useful, but there is one thing that they look for is, and it depends whether you're left-handed or right-handed, so maybe the audience can help me. I believe that when you're remembering a true fact, if you're right-handed, you look to the, you look up to the left, and if you're left-handed, you look to the right. Is that right? Or did I get it backwards? Let me know in the comments, and I'll correct myself. This is not my area of interest. I find statement analysis a lot more compelling and useful. Just it helps me think about, I like to listen to I think people in general say what they mean, even when they're trying to hide it. They pick language for a reason. They use language for a reason. Of course, I'm a writer's daughter, so. Okay, look to the left when lying. Thank you. Who said that? That's if you're right-handed? I know it switches if you're left-handed or right-handed. So if you're right-handed, you look up and to the left if you're lying. And if you're really remembering a real fact, you're looking to the right. Behance? Is that correct? Do I have it right? I don't want to put out this information.
Footage is seen in a new 5-part documentary, A Body in the Snow, The Trial of Karen Reid, that airs next week on ID. The series shows how the massive support for Reid was mobilized.
So there's Karen Reid in her Vanity Fair outfit, looks like. Am I wrong? Isn't that the same outfit she wore in those pictures in Vanity Fair where she's in the woods?
And its extraordinary impact.
It was a challenge for the first trial to find anyone on the jury who hadn't.
So this is Terry Dunmore, who comes from the show Unsolved Mysteries. And they all embedded with the defense. They didn't embed themselves with the police. And I get that they are at a disadvantage because so many people that I've heard, this is the rumor. I haven't seen any evidence of it. I haven't seen their contracts, but there is a rumor that John O'Keefe's parents and some of his friends have signed contracts with Gretchen Voss's Netflix project. Now, I think that, speaking of not worth the paper it's written on, that those contracts aren't worth the paper they're written on. I don't think Netflix is going to want to sue John O'Keefe's family if they do talk. That would look terrible. Go try that. Sue a grieving, after everything that they've been through, harassment, losing their daughter, losing their daughter to cancer, losing their son to murder. And I hate saying losing. It's like, there's an idea that maybe they'd be found. They're gone. They're not coming back. To cancer and then to murder from this lying, vindictive, sadistic psychopath who's rallied a mass of support from the press and the public and has a zillion flying monkeys also all ready to harass the victim's family. And anyone who dares has the opinion that Karen Reed killed John O'Keefe with her rather large SUV. So this is where she comes from. Unsolved mysteries.
Heard of the case. I think going into the second trial, it's going to be even harder.
The former college professor is accused of...
Wait, let me go back so you can hear her talk. Sorry. Terry Dunmore is her name.
And its extraordinary impact.
It was a challenge for the first trial to find anyone on the jury who hadn't heard of the case. I think going into the second trial, it's going to be even harder.
The former college professor is accused of mowing down her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, a police officer in a Boston suburb.
They call her a former college professor, but I mean, she was really adjunct professor, part-time, and also worked for financial firms. But I guess it gives you an idea that she's more trustworthy, that she's a college professor. No? Of course, you know who else who taught college? Brian Koberger. Now he's claiming he may have some kind of disability, which is their favorite thing to avoid the death penalty. He's too dumb to have receive the death penalty, which is how, of course, they got Purvis Payne out. Don't get me started on that case. I mean, he's still in, but he comes up for parole in a couple of years. He killed Charisse Christopher, her mommy, and her baby Lacey Christopher, and tried to kill her son, Nicholas Christopher. He lived by a miracle. He took the stand and admitted it, basically. Got caught fleeing the scene covered in blood, ran into a police officer, was found hiding in an attic. And the Innocence Project has been championing the free Purvis Payne and have done well with it. They got his death sentence commuted to life. But that guy has to be the guiltiest guy ever. ever. Oh, and they also tested he left his fingerprints all over the scene. And then they tested the murder weapon. And the Innocence Project said, we just have to test the knife, the murder weapon, and that will clear him. And of course, it comes back with his DNA. But that didn't stop, like it never does, stops the Innocence Project. They didn't walk away at that time. They didn't walk away from their client when it came back with a match. They just doubled down on it and talked about some incomplete DNA that was also found on that same weapon.
Supporters say she was framed. After jurors failed to reach a verdict in her first trial last year, a second trial is scheduled to begin in 3 weeks and threatens to reignite those passions.
You're on one side or you're on the other side. Friendships have been destroyed, families have been destroyed. It's quite the spectacle.
So they say, friendships have been destroyed, families have been destroyed because of disagreements, because they don't share the same opinion. It's not that Karen Reed has spearheaded with her lawyers through Turtle Boy, and I've done a bunch of episodes on this. Look at the Brian Tully's document to get Karen Reed's phones connected to Turtle Boy. And there's there's tens of calls between Yannetti and Turtle Boy and Turtle Boy and Jackson. So it's not that it's just that this case is such a hot wire that families can't get along because they have a difference of opinion. It's Karen Reed purposefully hyped up a group of people around her that would fiercely attack anyone who talked about her guilt. I mean, anytime I have a post, I have really one rule on my YouTube that you just can't insult other commenters without making a point. You have to make some kind of point, just not fling insults straight. So, I get rid of them a lot. There has to be some kind of argument made. I'm not going to let my comment section dissolve into just the flinging of insults. But almost every episode, you're terrible, you're dumb, what's wrong with you? Did you get dropped on your head as a baby? No one listens to you, you're pathetic. It's just meant to make it so uncomfortable for the few people that are speaking up for the O'Keefe family and for the truth that will stop. That's the point of it. So it's not that it's like, say, an issue like Roe versus Wade or something like that does divide families or is a hot button issue. It's not the issue. It's the campaign that Karen Reed started and encourages with her lawyers. That was their strategy. They knew they couldn't win in court. So they had to start an innocence fraud campaign. They had to appeal to the court of public opinion and gather as many flying monkeys, helpers, who would attack, dox, threaten to sue, scare, use fear and intimidation. That's how they've used it. So it's not that the case is so controversial and that's why. No, this all comes from Karen Reed, the person that you've embedded yourself with. I don't envision myself having the white picket fence, but should I have the white picket fence, I'm going to get out my weed whacker and keep it free from weeds, my weed whacker, and then scream at people that I'm married to a police officer and get away with me with my weed whacker. Anyone remember that? Her conversation with Brian Higgins. But doesn't she have such joy in her voice when she says, I have no kids? Because, of course, John O'Keefe's niece and nephews that he had become the guardian of with his parents, shared guardianship. But he had become such an issue for Karen Reed. She said to John O'Keefe, texted him right before she backed into him, the night of the January 28th, 2022. I think you can't remember the day, let's say the day, not the night, the day of January 28th, 2022, that the four of them, meaning John O'Keefe's niece and nephew, Karen Reed and John, they all had become toxic. It's not Karen Reed making things toxic, it's the children. And she did this lip service, and she said to Carrie, I believe it was Carrie, forgive me if it was Jen McCabe, when she was sectioned in the hospital so she didn't have to talk to the police by her father. So please take care of the kids. She knew she knew that they were, it's meaningless. She had just spoken with John O'Keefe about the parents' financial responsibilities with the kids via text message. She knew that she wasn't going to get the kids. She wasn't married to John O'Keefe as much as she was referring to him as her husband different times in the hospital and to police officers. But she did these sort of dramatic ideas of what someone might do in a situation where they were shocked by a tragic loss of life, like what happened to John O'Keefe. It was just some acting on her part. Take care of the kids, Carrie, Jen, take care of the kids. They weren't taking, it was all, she knew, she had talked about it with John O'Keefe that day. Kids were going straight to the grandparents. They'd already been taken care of. Then she said she wanted to comfort them, and she didn't say two words to them. Her priority was getting her stuff and sneaking out of there and getting her car the heck out of Dodge, away from the police, from John O'Keefe's house to her parents' home in Denton. That was the most important thing to her. Get the few possessions she had at John O'Keefe's house, which it's curious that after 2 years she didn't have more stuff. And get that car away from the police as soon as possible, ASAP.
Bullshit. I've worked in a financial services company for decades.
And to be working that Friday, the 28th of January, she was dying to go and get hammered. So much so that John O'Keefe said to her, you're dying to you're jonesing for a drink, so go. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but the words jonesing, you're jonesing to drink were in there. So go. She was constantly bothering, when are we going to go drink? When are we going to go drink? And then when John O'Keefe finally does go and drink, she can't come out because she has a plumber over right before a nor'easter to fix her hot water issues in her home in Mansfield that she's probably not going to stay at. She's going out with John, and he says, no one's going anywhere tomorrow. He says, Papa, meaning his father, who is a plumber, and I can fix it Monday. Don't worry about it. But she can't come out at 7 or 8 o'clock at night on a Friday, and she can't come out because she's waiting for a plumber. So this idea that she was constantly working and now she doesn't have her heavy work schedule seems kind of foolish, no? Because the testimony we heard from so many people was that she took care of the kids when John O'Keefe was working.
What's happening to me?
That's the first we've seen of that younger sister. And this is a theme that you'll see if you study innocence fraud campaigns. You might see the mother out there, but but there's always people in the family you don't see. And they're usually the people that aren't going along with the innocence fraud campaign. Where is the sister? Hasn't come to the hearings, hasn't talked to the press, hasn't gone to the fundraisers, hasn't gone to the thank you banquet for the influencers. Where is she? The rumor is that I've heard is that they're estranged. Wonder why? Does her sister know that Karen Reed is a psychopath? Is a dangerous individual? And has she gone no contact? Very cute her sister looks there, doesn't she? Impetuous. Is that a word you would use for Karen Reed? Impetuous? I would say aggressive. Impulsive. Controlling. Cunning. Calculating. Those are the words I would use. Impetuous. Okay. Also, okay, so they say acting or done quickly without thought. Well, that's not good for this. Controlled by emotion rather than thought. Imprudent, thoughtless, hot-headed, brazen, heedless, foolhardy, courageous. These are all overconfident, brash, madcap, daredevil, valiant, undaunted, gutsy, wild. But I would say her calculating side is one of the biggest sides. She goes on people's Facebooks and pulls up everything she can on them so she can create a fantasy narrative pointing the fingers away from her for herself. Attention seeking, vain, superficial, snide. Yeah, here, I'll put Kitty's 1993 says, impetuous describes her fateful reversal into John O'Keefe. Yeah. Listen to what she says, though, about the murder of John O'Keefe. To point that out. He didn't die, first of all. He was murdered. Big difference. But second of all, she loves pointing out that it's been longer. It's been a longer period of time that she's been accused of his murder and spearheading this innocence fraud campaign than the length that she was with John O'Keefe. I feel like I put that in the most awkward phrasing possible. She loves to point out that the time she spent with John O'Keefe is now shorter than the time she spent fighting these charges. How about that? So there's this statement she made to Vanity Fair. Let me see if I can pull it up. She says, the O'Keeffes never carried a pitchfork for me until I started getting to support. And she sees the support as a means to power. You didn't speak to any media. This is Karen Reed speaking. Now you're giving interviews. I believe Paul O'Keefe gave 2 interviews. It's hardly interviews. It pales in comparison to the numerous interviews Karen Reed and her lawyers have given. Now you're giving interviews. You really just can't stand my rising from the ashes. Oh, she's a noble creature, like the phoenix. The only thing that changed is I started to come from a position of power. I've reached the point that John, if you can hear me, John, can you hear me? I've marshaled every resource, John. No, she says, if you can hear me, I've done everything I can. I don't think your family can be saved. They don't want to see me incarcerated for the rest of my life, despite never seeing any evidence while you were alive that I mistreated you. It's not that she didn't mistreat him. It's just John O'Keefe's parents never saw any evidence of it. And it seemed that Peggy O'Keefe had a real hunch. She seemed to really never like Karen Reed. Always had a hunch about her. That she was a bad apple, psychopathic, dangerous individual. Crazy, right? Crazy, crazy, crazy. But I mean, the quote that I found most disturbing in Karen Reed's interview is, hold on one second, let me pull it up. Is this one. Let me just share my screen. Thanks for your patience. I find this very disturbing, this quote. This is from them on Twitter.
John was beaten up and attacked in that house. Who did it?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. And it's not for us to know. Somebody other than Karen is responsible for the killing of John.
Right. But okay, so if someone else is responsible, couldn't that be a accident? Couldn't they have accidentally killed him? If she has no idea, if there are so many possibilities, how does she know for sure that it wasn't an accident? And I've been arguing since the beginning, from Karen Reed's own words. She says the aim was to, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, the aim was to teach John a lesson at minimum. To think that this wasn't planned is a mistake. I think she had been fantasizing about doing something like this. Things had gotten so bad that John O'Keefe had asked her to move out. She refused to leave the home. And we'll get into a motion by the Commonwealth that I think is a super important motion coming up for Karen Reed's own statements that she told the people around her. But how would she know that it's definitely not an accident? Not, I didn't do it. It wasn't my accident, but I can't say it's not someone else's accident. I don't know what happened. I know I didn't do it because I was this, that, and the other. That's when you make a very specific argument, not this vague, I didn't do it. I mean, my car shows that I was there. It shows I made a 3-point turn, but no time did I make a 3-point turn. I mean, listen to her. How is she so sure?
Zero chance John was hit by.
I'm really, I don't like lying because I know that there are so many people in the public who can point out just by my facial expressions why I'm lying. My statements, my facial expressions, the words I use. I don't like it. And I particularly avoided it in court where there's real punishment. I prefer to deny these things on my way from court to the car. So it's a short period where I can't be asked any real follow-up questions and my feet can't be held to the fire. That's what she's saying. I hate when people catch me out in my lies.
With my car. Like, I can't make it sincere enough. I hate saying it.
She can't make it. She knows she can't make it sincere enough because she's not sincere. She has no remorse for killing John O'Keefe. She's not good at lying about it. She's dying to tell the world that she killed John O'Keefe. In fact, it gives her a feeling of power. She would like to brag about it if she could. Unfortunately, bragging about it comes with a hefty prison sentence. That she had been planning this, fantasizing about it, thinking, if he kicks me out of the house and breaks up with me, I'm going to teach him a lesson and cause him serious bodily injury and or death. And that's what she did. But it's very hard for her to lie and say she didn't do it. And look like she's sincere, look like she has remorse, look, she's very tired of trying to fake sadness. It's not coming. Does anybody remember the time she was walking from court and doing one of her impromptu post-court press interviews from the courthouse to her car? And they asked her, did you love John O'Keefe? And she said, no, we were dating. The thing she would like to communicate to the public is that she hates John O'Keefe. He and his family are trash and unworthy of living. She did everyone a favor by removing him from the planet. And it gave her immense feeling of power. She decided who lived or died. And she can be the only victim. That's the talking points for Karen Reed. I'm going to take a quickie break. When we get back, we're going to look at some of the new motions coming up. Don't go anywhere. I will be back in 1 minute. Actually, do you want to say? You know what? I usually play my break song. Let's play Alan Jackson, my Alan Jackson song.
I'm a tiny man, bark as bad as my bite. Got hundreds of ways to fool you. Hold my killer client tight. Cheat to win only increases my popularity. Stalk and shout around the courtroom like a Matlock parody. I'm a lawyer, a criminal lawyer. Think like a criminal, spout legalese. Lying by profession. When in doubt, blame the police. When my con gets exposed, I act deaf and dumb. Blame sudden onset amnesia. Got the press under my thumb. Drinks with my killer client at Smith and Walensky. Check paid for by fans. My elbow on the killer's knee. I'm a lawyer, a criminal lawyer. Think like a criminal, spout legalese. Lying by profession. When in doubt, blame the police. When my con gets exposed, I act deaf and dumb. Blame sudden onset amnesia. Got the press under my thumb. Drinks with my killer client at Smith and Walensky. Check paid for by fans. My elbow on the killer's knee.
Okay, we're back. So let's look at, we have a bunch of motions in limine, which means to exclude. By the way, before I get into that, did anyone see, I don't know who put this up on Twitter? Hold on one second. Marie Russell in her earlier days. Of course, she went right to the camera. She loves the limelight, attention seeker. Not exactly sure where this is from. Hopefully let me share my screen and show you. A young Marie Russell. But take a listen to this. This was put up by some. So they say, OMG, look who it is. And then they put in a whole bunch of micro dots. Lawyer, free Karen Reed, FKR. And then just to add insult to injury, justice for John O'Keefe, as if releasing his killer from responsibility would be some kind of justice. But check this out. Get to see a young Marie Russell.
Trouble areas.
Y'all look who this is.
All right, let's bring her in to see what this hospital's been here for over 100 years.
Look at
It's a level 1 trauma center. We get to see lots of patients that have had horrible things happen to them.
It's almost like, she's so callous. They've had horrible things happen to them. The more horrible, the more I enjoy it. It's just like there's something really dark about her.
Dr. Marie Russell has been here for 13 years.
She's just got this.
As an assistant professor of emergency medicine, young doctors learn from her in this real-life classroom.
Donald, she has a 2 centimeter stab wound right to her upper mid-back. She's got 2. And also to her left suprascapular
Area
and
midline neck, posteriorly. Okay, let's check for anything else here. Behind the ears.
And this is her
Let's look
13
at her
years in. Look at
axilla.
how
We have a very large training program here in medicine, in surgery, and emergency medicine. There have been more emergency doctors trained from this program than anywhere else in the United States.
USC is so well respected that the U.S. Army sends its medics here to train.
And let's get it.
USC is so well respected. But there's a curious admission near the end. I mean, this is in better days.
The hemoglobin type of cross match and the routine labs.
I think this was
The stabbing
2001 or
victim is stable.
2002.
And we'll get ready for the next patient.
A heart attack victim is coming in.
Okay, who's doing airway over here?
Look at
Okay.
Last year, doctors here treated almost 700 crash victims, 600 gunshot wounds,
She
and
is
400
just-
stabbings.
that. And they want to
Have you seen the lady
question.
with a
Right. She is just amazing. Right? But did they say dog bites? Where are the thousands of dog bites they treat? Or even hundreds of dog bites they treat? Let's go back. Let's listen to that again. And my apologies for this Karen Reed supporter talking over it.
Crash victims, 600 gunshot wounds,
She
and
is
400
just-
stabbings.
And they want to
Have you seen
question
the lady with
if she's
multiple
capable or
stabbings?
not.
Chief trauma surgeon on duty, Dr. George Velmahouse, helps assess the stabbing patient's x-rays.
Yeah. No one's saying she's not capable of being an emergency room doctor. What they're questioning is her hobby, whether her hobby of studying police dog bite and hold. So police dogs bite and hold the suspects. If that is applicable to this case, when there's no dog DNA anywhere, and she has no methodology as to how she identifies canine punctures, and it seems, and her testimony changes quite drastically from her voir dire to the trial to the second voir dire. I mean, almost as if, I believe, this is my belief, that Robert Alessi wrote her opinions, conclusions about the imaginary dog bites on John O'Keefe's body.
She's got a stab on the neck.
Midline neck, bilateral scapular areas.
Thank you.
Here.
All right. We'll keep a close eye. That's no problem.
Yeah. Okay.
County's ER is a round-the-clock assembly line of violence.
Gentlemen, can we start CPR again? Can one of you come in here and help out with CPR?
Right, it's a assembly line of violence, but never once is a dog bite. But she says she's seen thousands, but never one mention of dog bites. Curious, huh? Hey, funny. Love your AJ song. Thank you. Abracadabra, you're free criminal. Right. Abracadabra. Do you mean that Alan Jackson does an abracadabra and he frees criminals? He does some fraudulent. I mean, once again, they say they have 12 witnesses that they would like to testify in this retrial, that the Commonwealth has gotten zero discovery again. Again, we're in the same position that we were before trial, or a similar position, let's say, where they say they have 12 people that they'd like to testify for the defense, and they haven't handed over any discovery to the Commonwealth. Commonwealth knows nothing about who these people are. And what's going to be the remedy again? Voir dires, where the Commonwealth has no idea what to ask? Is that the remedy? Bizarre, no? Okay, so let's first look. Here. This is from Innocence Fraud Watch. Killer Karen retrial. List of motions and motions in limine. I'm not going to read a whole lot of stuff. I just wanted to give you an idea of what's coming up. So, defendant's motion in limine to present demonstrative exhibit based on Christina Hanley's testimony. Defendant's motion in limine to exclude irrelevant, inadmissible, and prejudicial prior bad character and propensity evidence. So we won't hear about Karen Reed. The rumors were that she burned her ex-boyfriend's car, lit it on fire, threatened another one with a knife. It's just a rumor. You haven't seen any police reports or anything to back it up. It could be totally untrue. It could be true. We don't know. Defendant's motion to impound portions of defendant's motion in limine. And also, I would assume that those prejudicial prior bad character evidence goes to someone like Richard Green, who was very drunk at McNasty's bar and claims that he was beat up when he wasn't. He was harassing the waitress and causing a scene. I'm sure that's not coming in. Defendant's motion to impound portions of defendant's motion in limine to exclude certain witnesses before and after testimony. Affidavit of Elizabeth Little in support of defendant, meaning Karen Reed's motion to impound. To exclude certain witnesses before and after testimony. I mean, look at how many of these are. There are. So linked to Commonwealth's motion in limine to appoint, they want to appoint a court stenographer and prevent identification of jurors and impound jurors' name during trial. Commonwealth's motion in limine to preclude reference to and redact the manner of death contained on the victim's death certificate. That's smart. That was made much of last trial. Should we look at that? But before I do, Commonwealth's motion in limine to introduce certified records from the Registry of Motor Vehicles. Commonwealth's motion in limine to allow expert celebrate demonstration. Commonwealth's motion in limine to admit the victim's out-of-court statements related to his state of mind. That I found the most interesting. So I just want to show you here. Commonwealth moves in limine according with settled practice that the death certificate be redacted for the means and matter of death. And then they use case law. We have stated that with respect to the admission of death certificate, the better practice is to redact the manner of death, such as words homicide, suicide, or accident. This is from the Commonwealth. General laws as amended through blah, blah, blah. It's very short. Signed by Michael Morrissey, Hank Brennan, Adam C. Lally, Laura McLaughlin. And Commonwealth's motion in limine to admit the victim's out-of-court statements relating to his state of mind. So are we going to hear from Michael Camerano why he didn't include it the first time, that John O'Keefe told the grand jury? No, he didn't tell the grand jury, told the police that John O'Keefe was very upset that Karen Reed didn't ask him to fix him and his father to fix her plumbing, her hot water, her rusty pipe issue that I believe is totally made up, along with Richie the plumber. There might be a Richie the plumber in that Mansfield area, but do I believe he was over at Karen Reed's house at 7:00 at night before a nor'easter and had run to Home Depot to get more parts and would be back mañana, meaning tomorrow, Karen's words? No, I don't believe it. I think it was just a way to gain control over John O'Keefe and to show how little she thought of him and how useless he was to her. Statements to his niece, nephew, family members, and friends regarding the defendant's intention to end his relationship with the defendant, and statements about the tumultuous nature of their relationship, which are all relevant to the victims, meaning John O'Keefe's state of mind. The broad rule on hearsay evidence interdicts the admission of statement made out of court, which is offered to prove the truth of what is asserted. However, declarations out of court may be admissible to prove that the state of mind or intent of person when it is a material issue. So here we have also the Commonwealth is looking for communication between Aiden Turtleboy Carney and Karen Reed to show consciousness of guilt, meaning as soon as she did this, she started looking for a megaphone, i.e. Aiden Carney, to get out the idea that there's a cover-up, that the people who got her are really corrupt and that she's a victim, and putting out totally fictitious and imaginary narratives in the public domain. And I believe it may come in. I think they may have some success with that this time around. And I think it would be very bad for Karen Reed and also very bad for Aiden Carney. The state of mind exception of the hearsay rule calls for admission of evidence of a murder victim's state of mind as proof of the defendant's motive to kill the victim when and only when there's also evidence that the defendant was aware of the victim, the state of mind at the time of the crime, and would be likely to respond to it. So John O'Keefe was like, you know what, Karen, it's over. I'm done. You coming or not? And I really think he took her glass because John O'Keefe was drinking beers, remember? He had that cocktail glass. There's no evidence that John O'Keefe was ever drinking from those cocktail glasses, but we have lots of evidence that Karen Reed was. He's in the passenger seat holding her cocktail glass. He gets out with it, thinking she's going to follow behind, and instead she puts her car in reverse, puts her foot 75% on the gas pedal, never once touching the brake, jerks the wheel into him and clips him with her SUV, and then leaves him to die there, and waits make sure that he's either seriously injured or dead before she goes back to the scene and checks it out. She could not miss that she was going to hit John O'Keefe. The reason she knew she was going to hit him is because she had that infotainment system beeping and flashing at her. So the closer you get, the more it's going to beep, the more it's going to flash. You're going to hit something. You're going to hit something. You're going to hit something. Louder and louder and louder, closer you get. And this would be a good time to revisit this classic interview. Anybody remember this one? Karen Reed's parents?
Did she believe she may have hit John?
No. No. She felt she struck something.
So that is experiential memory. Meaning you feel it when you hit something in your car, the reverberations of the bump of whatever you hit move through your entire body and the car. You feel like, so he realizes he messed up here, and now he's going to correct himself. So Karen Reed's dad knows he messed up. Watch him correct himself.
She said, "Dad, I think I struck something." I said, "What do you mean?" Right? This was in the hospital. Right? He says, "I remember, all right, backing up and hitting something."
Police find damage to the passenger side taillight of Karen's Lexus LX 570. How the damage occurred is in dispute. The Reeds believe it.
Don't tell me that's a cracked taillight. Don't tell me that's a cracked taillight. Let's look at that again. That is smashed to smithereens. And very much like Karen Reed's description, you can see the bulb right through there. She was worried she was going to be electrocute something. No, it was just cracked. It was just cracked, and the police took the rest out of it. It was just cracked. We're gonna really hone in on a choice of words and exploit it for all it's worth. Cracked versus smashed to smithereens. Just crack, just a tiny crack. What if Karen Reed what if Karen Reed stood up and was like, Leonard Cohen said that there, like, whatever lawyers or Alan Jackson was like, Leonard Cohen says there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. That's my closing argument. There's a crack in it. Does anyone know that song? There's a crack in everything, including Karen Reed's taillight. And it had nothing to do with hitting John O'Keefe. I rest, Your Honor. All right. It's absurd.
Occurred.
But anyway, let's get back. Anyway. Back to this motion. I don't want to go through all of it. I do just want to hit some of the main points. Okay, here we go. The Commonwealth moves the court to allow into evidence John O'Keefe's statements to his niece, nephew, family members, and friends regarding the defendant's intention to end the relationship, with the defendant's statements about the tumultuous nature of the relationships, which are relevant to this victim's state of mind. So we're going to hear about Richie the plumber. And it goes into case law. The Commonwealth intends to introduce statements the victim made to his family members and close friends in time to the murder about his relationship with the defendant and his decision to terminate the relationship. Does everybody get that for those in the back? John O'Keefe was ending the relationship. When Karen Reed was recently asked about this, why the Commonwealth would frame her, she says, I think it's about power. And I thought that was the most telling answer, because for Karen Reed, of course, it's all about power and control. You don't leave me, I decide. I decide whether I stay or go. I'm going to teach you a lesson. No one leaves the beautiful, the wonderful, the smart, the talented, the superstar, Karen Reed, and her, from the exceptional Reed family. The Commonwealth intends to introduce statements the victim made to his family members and friends close in time to the murder about his relationship with the defendant and his decision to terminate the relationship. The Commonwealth also intends to introduce the victim's statements through text messages authored by the victim and contained within the victim's cell phone that express his decision, communicated directly to the defendant to terminate their relationship. We didn't see this last time. We saw a lot of her begging, just tell me you're not into it anymore. And he's like, look, I'm not so quick to bounce back and become lovey-dovey like you are. So just, they're fighting constantly all the time. And that's the Commonwealth contends that the victim's state of mind is relevant to the defendant's motive to kill him. The defendant and the victim's relationship had deteriorated, and the defendant also made similar statements about the discord and disdain in the relationship, and the defendant herself had begun to engage in romantic and flirtatious communications with other men. Let me repeat this again for those in the back. Not with one man, not with Brian Higgins, with other men. So here, the defendant herself had begun to engage in romantic and flirtatious communications with other men. And there's all this case law concerning it. Adequate evidence to the jury to infer that the defendant was aware of the victim's plan to end their relationship. Proper evidence of threats and discord in relationship. Respective states of mind of victim and defendant. Defendant's statements and actions, including heated argument with victim in week before murder, permitted inference that the defendant and victim had communicated hostile intentions towards each other. Defendant's statement to others concerning argument with the victim over their relationship, coupled with victim's willingness to tell third parties that her relationship with John O'Keefe had deteriorated, permitted inference that defendant was made aware of victim's state of mind, whereas the defendant has repeatedly accused others of committing murder, meaning Karen Reed's pointing the finger at everyone else. The jury should be permitted to consider all evidence that demonstrates the relationship and hostility between the victim and the defendant at the time of the murder. And then it goes into case law at Mass, where the defendant describes the murder as an accidental shooting. Okay, anyway. The probative value of the victim's statements is relevant to the defendant's motive to kill him. The probative value of these statements outweighs any possible prejudicial effect, as these statements are being offered only to prove state of mind and not to the truth of the matter. So if we read text messages that say John O'Keefe saying, oh, you know, I think there's one where Karen Reed says, oh, you hit me with a pillow, and John O'Keefe says, that's not how it went down. The jury is not to infer by that Karen Reed or that Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe with the pillow. It just is to state of mind, to what they felt was going on in the relationship at the time and their feelings for each other. For all these reasons, the Commonwealth respectfully requests it to be allowed to introduce testimony of the victim's state of mind as proof as the defendant's motive to kill him. Hear, hear. I think we've been going for quite some time. But won't that be? I mean, it seems like there's a lot more evidence on that phone and a lot of more evidence of the poor state of the relationship between John O'Keefe and Karen Reed that we haven't seen, no? All right. There's a lot of new motions out. I'm going to try to keep it brief. Do you guys have questions or comments? How is your kitty cat? They're great. Thanks, Doris. Hold on. I'm way behind in the comments. Hold on. Let me catch up. Sorry, guys. So we don't have another hearing until the 18th. Yeah, John was overheard. Let me reflect says, you are correct. Let me reflect. And I think it's all coming in. Also, the relationship between Aidan Carney and Karen Reed to show consciousness of guilt. And I was listening to Grant Smith Ellis doing a really excellent explanation of what that means to be in a joint venture. It's on Twitter if you're interested. Try to put it in the comments. But that he's helping Karen Reed out. Karen Reed's lawyers are helping him out. I mean, that would have been insane to let Beto Rowe onto Karen Reed's team. It would just be such a conflict of interest. And ultimately would, if we got a conviction, it would have been an easy appeal for Karen Reed. Yeah, did you listen to it, Eva? It was good. He really just stuck to the material and explained it quite nicely, as he's a law student. Yeah. Yeah, nobody. I mean, we have just weeks. I mean, just weeks. So you're going to see a lot of these decisions on this. I think Alan Jackson is coming in. So I don't think he should be allowed to, but I don't think Cannoni wants to delay this trial. So she's turning a blind eye on all the all the absolute fraud in this case and permitting it. And, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about some other stuff that happened last trial that I was looking into today. No sanctions. If there is sanctions against the defense, it might be something like a monetary sanction, which nobody likes to pay a sum of money to the court, but considering, Karen Reed has a very generous, large group of supporters that have given enough money that she can live at the Omni Hotel. She's not lacking for her hair being done, and looks like she might be getting Botox and filler and new clothes and drinks at Smith and Walensky's, which is not cheap, and fine dining. So I wouldn't be surprised if they pick up any kind of fine. So they, I'm just not sure that there will be any sanctions the way this is going. But I mean, the reason I think that is because it was so obvious that to anyone who wasn't born yesterday, that Yannetti, when he put in Proctor's text message that was under seal, that he meant to do it. Lawyers don't absent-mindedly put in things into their filings by mistake. They don't sneak into their filings by mistake. That's what I'm saying. That was done very purposefully. They knew that Judge Cannoni's a soft touch and they'd get away with it. And they were right, as they've been perpetually line stepping since the beginning. Line stepping, breaking the rules, breaking the law. And they knew that there would be, there's a curious, did you know that Brian Walsh, who's also trying to use the information about Proctor, there is a mention of another case in the area. He killed his wife, Walsh, and Proctor was one of the investigating officers in his case. That there has been, it seems like there was a mention of the lawyers communicating that Brian Walsh's case was supposed to go in front of Cannoni too. And then Cannoni left the Walsh case to take on the Reed case full time, so she could be on the Reed case full time. Isn't that curious that the same kind of lawyers get the same judge? And I know there's not a ton of judges and it's a smaller area, but still, isn't that interesting? Meaning, I think they wanted to go up in front of Cannoni. I think she's a very defense-friendly, as much as the Free Karen readers don't think so. She's a very defense-friendly judge. And she's going to let you not only cross the line, go over the line, break the law with zero punishment. I mean, what kind of punishment is a voir dire? As Hank Brennan said, we don't know the questions to ask. Without any information on who these people are or how they came to their conclusions. Sitting through a voir dire led by the defense is not enough for us to dig deep and challenge it the way that we need to in cross. So I found that curious. I think there could be a whole episode on the relationship between Brian Walsh. Is that right, Brian? Do I have his name right? Brian Walsh's lawyers and Karen Reed's. So that is what I have for today. I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. Please, so much more to talk about. Lots of stuff going on. Please support the podcast. Send a donation via Venmo. That's really the best way. To send a donation. Send a donation via Venmo. Buy me a coffee. Become a patron. All the link is in the description. Hit the thumbs up. Share this episode. Become a channel member. I'm going to be doing more stuff. I have a plan of something to do for just channel members only very soon. And I'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks. Let me reflect. You got it in at the last minute. Let me reflect. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow at 6. Appreciate it. Have a great night, everyone.
I hit my boyfriend with my car. It wasn't an accident, but with lying lawyers I'll go far. Lying lawyers and witness harassment, I'll avoid prison. It was snowing. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system a clown. Innocence fraud campaign to save my skin. Making money, truth is my second victim. Carry, Jen, like John, you were my mom. My innocence fraud campaign is my biggest hit yet. I hit my boyfriend with my car. It wasn't an accident, but with lying lawyers I'll go far. Lying lawyers and witness harassment, I'll avoid prison. It was snowing. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system a clown. Innocence fraud campaign to save my skin. Making money, truth is my second victim. Carry, Jen, like John, you were my mark. My innocence fraud campaign is my biggest hit yet.